My name is George Bone. I am a commercial music production master student at Tullyard Education, and I am also the lead sound designer for Dear Mr. Fantasy.
Oh, hello, George.
Hi, Alex. This wasn't scripted at all.
So, what has been the most beneficial thing about working on the sound design and the sound aspects of Dear Mr. Fantasy?
I think any production that you go into with an open mind, as I did with this production, gives you a lot of experience going into the movie and television and even the video game scene as it is, because everything requires a more adept knowledge of how sound functions. And to be able to stick out in the industry, you need to be able to present it as if it's sounding really great as well as looking great, because multiple senses hit you all at once. Um, I think the most beneficial thing for working on this project specifically is that it's a longer form project than what I'm normally used to. I'm normally used to doing production for short songs and about 3 or 4 minutes, sort of like essentially jingles, but I've never been put to writing, or rather sound designing, the music and uh, dialogue for a short film at all. I've done Amazon Prime docu-series, which have been really, really fun, but that's not audio that I've been directly involved with making. I just sort of got the audio and they've basically been like, okay, fix it. Whereas with this project, it's been beneficial to have a very hands-on take of it from the very beginning of the process itself. Alex asked me whether I wanted to be involved in this project in August of 2019. Please correct the record. Sorry, 2021. Sorry, I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm thinking 2020 timescale. Okay, let me repeat that. Alex asked me to be a part of the project in August of 2021. And he laid out the initial plans for the project for me, and I was very excited with the direction in the way that the project was going, and I basically signed on immediately from there.
And to this day, you've been a very valuable asset. No, really kind words, George. But apart from
Says with irony.
the irony is a great thing. But with all this benefit, would you say there's been some challenging moments as well during?
Oh yeah, I mean, the Voldemort of all airborne diseases, the COVID that must not be named. Oh no, but no. On a serious note, production has been very much in the whim of COVID measures. Again, I was put on this project in August of 2021. And with a very tight schedule for filming, which overlapped with my masters. But it always came with the caveat of this needs to be done in the most professional and the most safe manner that it potentially can be in. COVID restrictions, to an extent, going up to Christmas, were still in place, and obviously more came in as Omicron spiked at the end of 2021, going into 2022. So it was really difficult to coordinate a lot of that stuff because some key actors wouldn't be in. And for example, when we were doing ADR stuff, I got COVID at the start of 2022, which hampered a lot of production elements where it involved a lot of ADR, because sound, audio, direction, that it caused a bit of problem. That being said, the people who stepped in were really, really good. I gave some notes from afar, and they were workable. Thankfully, the majority of the people who were working on this project, in fact, all of the people who were working on this project were under 30, and people who were unlikely to feel a lot of deadly side effects from COVID, which is really, really good. And we were all vaccinated, we all tested beforehand, which is again really, really good and important in this industry where you're going to be interacting and having that tactility with a lot of people. But yeah, COVID and all of its tentacles were definitely aggregating factors when putting this production together.
I can definitely agree and vouch on that one as well.
I can agree.
As the person leading and making sure everything was COVID safe, yeah, it was an absolute not nightmare. I wouldn't say it was just almost another challenge on top of the many challenges that normally go into filmmaking and normally go
Just-
into.
I think this needs to be said for the behind the scenes documentary, but you do not text with any emojis. So your texting is default how I would consider me angry texting. So every time I get a text from you, which is obviously very well meaning, and you're obviously a really nice person, like obviously in person, and I've known you for a considerable amount of time, but whenever I get a text from you that has no emoji, so I'm like, I don't know how to take this. Is he angry with me, or is he really happy with something that I've done? And especially when we were organizing rehearsals and organizing actual shoots, there would be no emojis behind anything that you said. So whenever people were giving in LFTs, it'd be, thank you, Sophie. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And I was like, I don't know, guys, is he serious about this? But no,
About that, because I do come across as a nice guy, but I try to be as professional as possible with everyone, so that's why.
Yeah, exactly. A neutral perspective, it got all done, and we're very, very grateful for how you managed the project as a whole.
Thank you, they're very kind words. Now, obviously, from the challenges and from the benefit, from your perspective as a sound designer, what would you say is the most beneficial aspect of using sound designing and like all types of sound and music in film and TV production? What would you say the most beneficial aspect of that is?
I mean, considering the fact that when you are going to the cinemas, your main two senses that we can use currently at the moment are sight and sound. If the sound design is buggered, and if you can't hear what the people are saying, you're not only detracting from 50% of the senses available to you, but you're also detracting from the story. If you can't hear a key bit of dialogue, then it can't inform you on how the next scene is going to be. If the audio for a song, a licensed song, is too loud in the mix, then you lose a bit of that dialogue. Contrary to that, if something is too loud and blaring in your ears, then you don't want the audience to suffer through physical pain while they're watching something that should be entertainment. Especially with audio, and like, it's a cliche, but like, it's a balancing act. It's as much of a balancing act out of production as much as it is in production. You've got to get the right tone of how people are saying things. You've got to get the right take. You've got to make sure that everything is at the same level, because if something is louder than another, or in a different sort of EQ space than the scene before it, then it's going to sound really, really choppy and ultimately really really unprofessional, sorry. There are a lot of elements that go to making a really, really good cut other than the actors' performances. And the like in a performance or an orchestration or something like that, the conductor can only give the musicians so much power, the director and the actors respectively. It's what the people recording the concert do with it afterwards, whether they decide to cut the first violin because it's sounding crap, and whether they decide to push the timpani further forward. It's those creative decisions of where to place sound and how to place sound in the spectrum. Again, if we weren't adept to sound, if we were all tone deaf, you wouldn't be able to tell my voice apart from your mum's. You wouldn't be able to recognize your telephone call. You wouldn't be able to hear when a car is coming across the road. It's the audible cues that make a big difference in how we live our lives, and it's exactly the same as on screen. It's audio cues that synchronize with what we're seeing that make things believable. If that's is that as in-depth explanation as you wanted? Cool. Nice. There's a brilliant, just on a side note, there's a brilliant TED talk from a British conductor called Benjamin Zander, where he talks about people being tone deaf and the appreciation for classical music. It's only about 18 minutes long, but it will absolutely change your life. Give it a listen.
No, that's good. That's really, really good. That it led me onto a sort of like a different question. It sparks a new question, which was really, really good. So, from recent films or TV shows that you've watched and enjoyed,
Yeah.
which show or film would you say has had the best sound design that applied to its film or TV in terms of like their tone, in terms of their design, in terms of their aspects in providing the style towards the audience?
I mean, I think we were literally having this conversation the other week, and thank God that I was reminded about it by my dad watching a section of it this morning. But thank God the Schneider Cut exists of the Justice League, because one aspect of it that I can fully commend is the introduction of Darkseid and the way that they audio treated. Who was the actor who played Darkseid again? Yes, that was it. Yeah. The audio design on Ray Porter's voice is absolutely gorgeous. In comparison to his Purple Friend over in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Josh Brolin obviously gives a really commendable, in fact, a beautiful performance. He's a sympathetic Titan. He also knows the degree for his power, whereas Darkseid hasn't got those checks and balances yet. And the presence and the gravitas which is felt in his voice, barely any high end on the EQ, not an amount of reverb that would make someone really nauseous, but you can hear the sort of like rumbling and the massive presence that his voice has in the mix, especially when compared to someone like Desard, who's having a conversation at the very, very end of the movie. Desard has a sort of mid-tone voice around 5-6K with multiple monotones over the top of it, whereas Darkseid is, I obviously not giving Ray Porter any justice here. Like, you can hear the reverb in his stomach. You can hear that there were multiple takes over the top of this synchronizing with each other. The reverb, the EQ, the echo on his voice, especially in the final scenes where you see him. It's probably one of the biggest successes from Justice League, and that's saying something when you can give your villain enough gravitas that you want to see him again, but knowing sadly that you now never will. So, I mean, again, it's a part of the movies that have stayed with me for a considerably long time after its release. So yeah.
No, that's a good choice. That's a really good choice. Like the Snyder Cut. I recently went to go see the Batman, and it had very, very,
Oh,
very
get you.
sound design by composure by Michael Giacchino, and the sound design was very strong in terms of like little aspects and little motifs. So I think sort of answering that question for myself, for me, the Batman, because it just has such a strong sound presence, but strong visually as a film in general. Now, on to my last question for this lovely little interview. What would you say is your favorite section or moment that occurs in Dear Mr. Fantasy without spoiling the film?
Right. Okay. I mean, considering the fact that we've literally just had a meeting tonight to talk through the first cut, I would have to say there is a transition going from the second scene to the third scene where they're filming a section. Well, the crew are filming a section of the movie. A transition where Jack, the main actor, the director, picks up a prop gun and puts it down on the table, but at the same time, that transition is used to go into the scene that they're filming. So it has a double purpose, it has a double meaning. And what I'm very much looking forward to getting the sound on that to make it give it as much presence as the scene deserves, because the sort of quick cuts that go into it really give the scene momentum and really make you feel like there's a lot of tension, not only between the actors themselves, but also between in the scene that happens post the interaction between the actors. I hope I haven't given anything away. Cool, amazing. That's £5 off of my feet. No, I'm joking.
Great Jack Clark, who plays Ed Wells in Dear Mr. Fantasy. Yeah, we delivered that scene very close, but very, very well in terms of like the idea, in terms of how it would transition. But we've got a nice idea how to implement that a little bit more. But for now, George, I wanted to say thank you very much for all your hard work on this project, and thank you for taking time to speak to me about your experiences throughout production.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm looking forward to seeing the production when it is fully realized on the big screen when it premieres.